former British ambassador to Russia. So, Tony Brenton, good to see you this morning. Is this the sort of stance we should be taking? Will it work?
Yes, absolutely. This is the sort of stance we should be taking, and it's very correctly targeted. The people responsible for the outrage that happened in Salisbury were, in effect, the Russian intelligence agencies. The 23 people we have now expelled. The MI5 keep a list of likely intelligence agencies in the Russian embassy here. It feels to me as if they've kicked out the entire list. And the other measures that have been announced are obviously designed to make life much harder for the intelligence agencies operating in London.
It's an interesting thought, this, isn't it, that we know there are 23 spies in the Russian embassy, but it's not until the moment that something goes diplomatically wrong that we actually kick them out. I think a lot of people might be thinking, how do we tolerate their presence here anyway?
Well, we don't know. I mean, it's a matter of evidence and assembling probabilities, really. These are 23 likely intelligence agencies in the views of our intelligence agencies. We don't throw them out because what is now about to happen is that the Russians will almost certainly throw out a large number of our diplomats in Moscow, most of whom will not be intelligence agents. And thereby our ability to do normal business with the Russians is going to be very damaged.
So how bad will that be? They've promised a response. We're braced in the UK for that. What's that likely to be, do you think, and how bad will it be?
Well, the core of it will be, I mean, the Russians are very reciprocal. They will go almost exactly tit for tat, I hope. So they'll throw out roughly the same number of people, I would expect, from Moscow. And as I say, most of those will be normal diplomats whose business, ironically, is building good relations between Russia and the UK in various fields. That's what I would... There will be other subsidiary measures. They will try as far as possible to balance what we have done. But that's what will be at the core of it.
Some of the things that people might be worried about while the kind of diplomats, which perhaps seem far removed from a lot of our lives, battle it out, is things like energy. Gazprom, I think, is about 20%, isn't it, of some of the supplies we use here in the UK. In February, when we had that cold spell, beast from the east, we borrowed a big chunk of energy. We've got another one we're about to go into. Is that likely to be a problem for us if they go down that route?
Well, I hope things are not going to get anything like that far. I mean, one of the great benefits of having diplomats is that you can have this real, but in a sense also symbolic exchange, where each side is seen as operating toughly against the other, while isolating other major relationships and interests from it. There's lots of Russian trade with the UK, lots of Russians visit the UK and vice versa. There's lots of legitimate Russian-UK involvement. It's important, as far as possible, to maintain that.
How nasty could this get? You know, we heard yesterday the US ambassador to the United Nations come out very strongly in support of the UK. But I think, you know, the idea was raised a little earlier that are we on a route towards something much nastier happening, or does this remain, at this stage, just symbolic?
Well, it could slide out of hand, and there'll be a lot of people thinking hard in London and in other Western capitals, and indeed in Moscow, about containing the confrontation. It's already pretty nasty. I mean, what the Russians did in Salisbury was a major, major breach of international law and international convention, using a forbidden substance in a way which endangered British citizens on British streets. We have to respond vigorously to that. The Russians will respond to our response, and it will be a matter then of containing the sort of tit-for-tat element at a point where it doesn't extend more widely to seriously affect trade, economic and social relations. And if I could just add, maintaining those relations is finally the hope. I mean, Russia at the moment is an extraordinarily difficult country to deal with. The only... We've taken the measures we've taken. We hope that will deter a repetition of what's happened in Salisbury or anything like it. But the long-term solution to the Russian problem is Russia reintegrating with the West, reintegrating with the world economy, acquiring interests that they don't want to see damaged by this sort of tit-for-tat confrontation.
And just finally, one of the measures that Theresa May took was to say that there is going to be a sort of diplomatic boycott of the World Cup. Royals won't go, officials won't go, the team will still go. So will Vladimir Putin be hurt or stung by that at all?
I doubt it. I have to say, I think this is a symbolic measure. You couldn't send a member of the royal family to Russia when Russia has behaved as it just has and when relations are as bad as they are. I don't think it will actually affect the Russian reaction to our measures. The main aim is to discourage the Russians from doing anything like this again, and the World Cup, from that point of view, is probably neither here nor there.
Will it worry fans at all, British fans going there, I'm wondering, to support it? Will they feel more endangered?
Or, yeah, indeed, from a backlash against the UK?
Well, that is something which I'm sure we'll be watching very carefully. I mean, I was ambassador in Moscow when there were various major games there, and actually the Russians were very proper in their concern for the security of our fans and making sure there was no real trouble. We have to hope and expect that they want a successful World Cup. They don't want real problems with any group of fans, but we will have to work quite hard to ensure that there's no particular discrimination or problem with British fans, particularly since our measures and the state of relations now mean that it's not only the Russian state, but also the Russian people to some extent are angry with us.
Yeah. So Tony Brenton, thanks very much indeed for joining us, former ambassador to Russia. 6:44.